before we open the discussion to the audiences, I would like to thank again all the presenters here. They have beautifully summarized or mentioned some principles, some characteristics of disaster relief in United States or in the world, in Southeast Asia, and also in mainland China, about earthquake, about wildfire, hurricane, and also I'd like to thank our last presenter, Dr. He, for summarizing the principles of disaster relief of Tzu Chi. I think they have mentioned many, many important characteristics and principles to make sure the success of disaster relief, especially for the future. And to me, actually there are two concepts closely linking to the points all the presenters have mentioned. The two concepts are empowerment. One of them is empowerment, especially empowering the community. That means help the community to be stronger and to have a stronger power to resist the natural disasters. And the second concept is sustainable development, 永续发展. I think that's the goal for all the we are trying to say in this forum. That means we would really like the victim communities to be able to develop themselves forever or gradually. I think that's the ultimate goal of disaster relief. So thank you very much again. So now we have 14 minutes. We would like to open the question and discussions to the audiences.
在座有没有问题或者建议要提出来的？请把握时间。Or maybe some of you would like to respond to one of my comments about empowerment and sustainable development. Thank you.
Sure. I think what you're saying is so important about sustainable development, and that relates to another comment that's talked about a lot, which is building resiliency within the community. And I think in any effort today in trying to accelerate the recovery and mitigate some of the issues that are there, we need to build that level of resiliency back into all the solutions that we do. But resiliency also includes taking responsibility for the environment that you live in. And one of the changes, I think it's slow, but is starting to happen, is if you live in an area, let's take Taiwan, where we know there are risks of earthquake, and we know there are risks of typhoons, that from an individual and a family standpoint, it says realizing that it is somewhat a shared responsibility between the individual, their family, their neighborhood, and the government to be able to be more resilient. So you should plan for those things. Plan as a person, as a business, and so forth, and as a community. And if you do that, it may take some retroactive repairs to buildings. It may take some changes in plans and a little change in behavior. Most of that can be done by education. Then when the next event occurs, because unfortunately it is going to happen, the losses will be dramatically reduced and the ability to recover will be shortened significantly. And everyone will feel more comfortable that they're now well prepared. So that would be my comment about sustainability.
Thank you. Yeah. Exactly. Trevor?
Yeah, I'll build on that point on the idea of preparedness. So in my remarks, I spoke about working to develop programs to really serve the individual. In order to do that well, you have to understand the community before the disaster. It's very difficult to come into a community to help afterwards and think you know how it works, how the community, how the culture operates, how the community operates. So you have to understand the community beforehand. And I think part of a way to do that is to work on preparedness and resilience building. One tactic we've used in partnership with FEMA and Suchi and so many other partners is we go door to door. We go home to home. We stand in the living room with a family, and we teach them about preparedness. We give them tips and tools on how to take some basic steps to prepare their family and have a plan. We've done that for the last few years, and hundreds of thousands of families now have a little bit more information. And having that individual conversation makes such a difference because that's what people listen to, or people they trust. And now we know in those communities when that disaster happens, because it will, they have a new level of trust with the Red Cross and with our partners that when we do come to help, they're ready to receive that help and move towards recovery much faster, which really is the core of resilience, is being able to bounce back that much quicker.
Okay, thank you. I also like to mention one more point about Trevor's presentation. That is the recovery of mind. That really the matter. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
这个灾民的心理健康问题呢是非常重要的啊。那么作为大陆呢，这个传统的几千年的救灾历史的过程中间呢，给他吃饭，给他衣服穿是已经是了不得的事情了啊。那么怎么你这个还那个不行啊，这个不行，这种心理健康的问题呢，过去是从来不考虑的事情。那么在汶川地震之后呢，心理健康第一次就开始做心理健康，包括来自香港、台湾和美国和日本的，其实这个心理健康，这个能够提供心理健康、心理援助的话，在中国的历史上是真是了不得的事情。因为过去只是为吃饭，给点饭、给点衣服穿，就了不得的救灾了，对不对？现在是吃饭和那个衣服能够解决的，在上面再解决心理健康的问题吧，这是很大的一个标志，这个转变。那么在这汶川地震之后呢？后面的雅安地震，那么包括慈济啊等等方面都参加了这个心理治疗，有的是短期的，有的是长期的等等方面。那么进一步呢，就是在鲁甸地震，再过鲁甸地震6、7年之后呢，那直接由国家来进行干预心理治疗的。那么包括社工治疗，先是医疗救援队，然后下面的社工，那么刚才讲的这个调拨了广东、深圳、上海、北京、四川、成都。来对云南灾区进行心理治疗这个问题。那么现在呢，就是整个灾后重建过程中间呢，特别在规划中，心理治疗是特别强调的啊。到现在还没有完，还在做心理治疗。那么很多事情就是，比如说那个汶川地震去年10年了，但是心理的阴影还是没有走过去，所以说我觉得现在大陆现在心理治疗这一块是非常这个做得非常好啊。但是呢，毕竟是大陆和大陆人他传统的文化跟西方的心理治疗，比如说你香港的心理治疗、台湾的来的心理治疗等等方面，因为一开始说防火防盗，第3个防心理治疗，防火防盗防心理还是防这个有这种话，因为一开始不习惯说你讲出来，中国人的这个大陆人不像你讲出来什么东西，他不习惯这种东西，对吧？但是心理治疗、心理援助，他让你讲出来，让你整个所以这个有个适应的过程中间。那么现在呢，就一旦发生什么灾害，我们就心理治疗马上就上。那么昨天其实，在飞机上我也在写这个我们这个社工、那个慈善社工，还有那个志愿者，怎么能够有序的参加这个联动？然后你做心理治疗的，你提供物品的，你做小学的，你各种各样，各就各位，形成这样一个体系啊，大概这样情况。
OK， 谢谢顾博士。
Okay, thank you. I will continue to provide 2 concepts. It's called 2C and 2G. 2C is compassion and conviction. 3 years ago, we organized the 4th Tzu Chi Forum. I invited one of my good friends, Professor Herman Lerner from Harvard University. He presented the Tzu Chi case right here. He talked about conviction is very important because disaster is unpredictable, it's uncertain. You cannot plan for disaster next year. You cannot say, hey, how much budget we need for the next year's disaster. You cannot predict that. So only thing you can rely on is your conviction, whether you want to do it, whether you want to go there to rescue, to provide support to them. So conviction could be the core for the NGO because when will it happen? Where will it happen? And how efficient the government, you don't know. So the only thing that I want to overcome the difficulty is based on your conviction and compassion. So it's two core things. And the other thing is giving and gratitude. Giving is healing. Mr. Gujan said about the post-trauma disorder syndrome. That happened everywhere in the earthquake. And our experience is not send the psychiatrist to really do the psychiatrist analysis, but instead we encourage survival to helping the others. Helping the others, you underwent the transcendence of the spirit. By giving others, you transcend your own suffering. Then we have one story in Sichuan earthquake. We accompanied with a mother, a young mother, who just lost her lovely younger daughter. And when they found the body, the head is disappeared. So the mother cannot really sleep, cannot eat, cannot talk for almost 2 weeks. Eventually, our volunteer accompanied with her and brought her to do the volunteer, to cook her meal to the other survivors. And a couple of days later, when Dai TV station interviewed with her, she can smile. So giving is healing. By encouraging them to give, they're going to transcend their own suffering and reach, a relatively calmness status. So, and giving with gratitude especially, create a cycle of love. We give with gratitude. So the local survivor will follow your step, follow your model, and to give love to the community. So that's the sustaining the relief work. That's our experiences and our model. Thank you.
I just want to comment on the mental health issue and some experience in that. After major earthquakes, one of the things that we found around the world is because there are constant aftershocks, in some countries the areas are taped off and you're not allowed in. In others, there is no such restriction. And an example I mentioned was the earthquake in Izmit and Golchek in Turkey a number of years ago, which was pretty devastating. And people were dying in the aftershocks as well. And we realized that the society in general was paralyzed with fear because of what was going on. So we knew we had to do something. And what they were afraid of is being trapped, that in an aftershock, they might be in a building or near it and they'd be caught. And the fearful was that they would not be heard. We brought in several 100,000 whistles on lanyards that we brought in, and we handed out to everybody a whistle and a lanyard, very inexpensive. That one gesture of giving them something that they felt that if they were trapped, now they could be heard, restored the confidence in the entire area that allowed people to start going back and being productive. The next thing that we looked for, and this is a very typical pattern, is we look for, is there a ceremony or something in the street that is a church or a mosque or any kind of a religious type of ceremony that's taking place in a street corner where a minister or religious leader is bringing people together to start to talk to them about what went on. That is a huge event in any disaster in the mental health. The next one is really interesting in the hierarchy. It's actually, we may see someone in the street getting their hair washed or their hair cut. And that's another huge advance because now they're starting to care about their personal appearance, which they did not before. And it's slowly going through those steps. So there are things that can be done to help contribute to that, to stabilize that, to give people confidence back again, and to bring them together. And that's really an important factor in any disaster.
Okay, thank you, Brent. So religion does matter. Trevor, you would like to respond about the recovery of mind a little bit more?
Sure. So mental health and the recovery of the mind is something the Red Cross believes deeply in. I think we use volunteers like we do everything else in the Red Cross. So we have more than 4,000 mental health professionals that are volunteers across the U.S. that are also trained in how to provide that mental health care in times of disaster, on how to do that in a way that people find respectful, that encourages them, that takes the stigma out of mental health. One other tactic we've used and a few disasters, we get into communities where there is a strong stigma against mental health, and the idea that I would go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist is just not something people do. When we had the oil spill off the coast of Louisiana and Alabama several years ago, the fishermen wouldn't go see the mental health specialist, and we had a lot of suicides happening because they'd lost their businesses. We had several suicides, and so we went in. We couldn't get them to come to mental health to see a mental health provider. What we could do is train them how to help their neighbors. And we opened up a class to say, we'll train you how to help the people you love and how to identify when they're at risk. They came to those classes. They came to be a part of serving their community. And so we've taken that lesson, and now we do that in every disaster to train people in what we call psychological first aid. So there's first aid for the body, and there's first aid for the mind. And psychological first aid is a way to train each other on how to look for the signs of vulnerability, signs that you may have some stress that's overcoming your daily activities. And we can all help kind of build a stronger, more resilient person through that.
Indeed. Thank you very much. At the end, I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers again for their wonderful presentations. And also, I'd like to thank you, all the audiences, for joining this session. Thank you very much.